host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
Yes, welcome to the Consumer Quarterback Show, helping you win in any marketplace, bringing in all types of great expert contributors on the daily to help you understand your buying decisions, make you more street smart here on the Consumer Quarterback Show. Logan Briggs is going to be in studio, TH Roofing. We're going to talk about supply chain and also storm relief efforts in South Florida. Also, are we in a recession? Are we going into a recession? And what is the definition of a recession? We're going to discuss that and more here on the program. We got Jared Parker in the house as well. He's a regional economic consulting group. He's a partner there. And we've got new legislation that just came out of Tallahassee, recently passed bills that are signed into law. How does that affect you? How's that going to affect development and some other interesting areas here? So we got a great talk coming up here with Jared Parker on the Consumer Quarterback Show. Save our hotline number. At some point you may need us. Give us a call, a text, shoot a text message. You know, I love talking to our audience because each day it's different questions, different concerns. You know, I had several people reach out last week around mortgage advice. A couple of people wanted to get hooked up with our CPA, our financial advisor. So reach out, 727-263-3707. 727-263-3707. And online at consumerqb.com. But getting a lot of emails also through the website. There's a form that you can go to the website, consumerqb.com, and just submit the form. You know, quick questions, we can answer them and help you live a better life and avoid a lot of the commission-based advice that's so prevalent out there. A lot of scams popping up too, especially now with this new AI. There's a lot of scams. People are utilizing voiceover to extort money from people. So the solution to that is create a safe word. You know, your family should have a safe word relating to that. What's the password, in a sense, around that? So we want to help you live a better life and avoid a lot of those issues. So I'm Brandon Rhymes. I'm your host of the Consumer Quarterback Show, and my wife Lindsay and I also own a top 100 ranked real estate team here in Tampa Bay. We are over 65 current listings, vacant land, commercial properties, residential properties, 15 buyer agents on the team. So we got a great group of assets that can help you win in any marketplace. Lots of ways we can help you win with our assets here in Tampa Bay. Hot listing here at 3704 Burger Road in Lutz, Florida. We got a mansion for sale. This is a beautiful property. You got 10,000 square feet, 9 bedrooms, 12 baths. There's no CDD or HOA. You got a beautiful indoor area with a full bar and an oversized deck. I mean, what an awesome area, cool area to throw a party and just entertain. You got full tennis court, library, movie theater, sauna, 2 master suites, grand balcony, and more over at 3704 Burger Road in Lutz, Florida. $2.3 million listing from the Platinum MVP team at Keller Williams Realty, also known as Livian Coastal Elite, is our new brand through Keller Williams. We've got Edgewater Beach Drive in Lakeland. This is a great opportunity in Polk County. If you want another, we got a lot of waterfront homes, beautiful properties. Here's one in Lakeland that's 3,000 plus square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bath. You got a 2-story home on Lake Parker. No HOA restrictions, wood burning fireplace in the living room, and it's just got a beautiful pool open to the natural environment out there. Beautiful deck, fire pit as well. 1312 Edgewater Beach Drive, Lakeland, Florida. You can see all of our real estate listings at platinummvpteam.kw.com.
Yeah, I'm racing my class to those saving our ass overseas.
And a quick shout out to our friends at Replenish IV Solutions. If you are thinking about getting a vitamin infusion, you maybe need a boost in your immunity, reach out to Stephen and Lisa Gunnan over at Replenish IV Solutions. Let them know the Real Estate Quarterback sent you. All right, we got our friend Jared Parker back in studio. Jared, good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, my pleasure. Absolutely. I always love talking to you, and you know, I love interviewing our expert contributors. I always learn something. Yeah. You know, especially from your segments, because you're going to give us an update on these things happening out of Tallahassee. Yeah. You had some of your background. You spent some time in Tallahassee. Give us a little bit of that background, and then tell us about this Senate Bill 102.
Yeah, so my background, I used to work in the legislature I did about a decade over there, and my partner did another 20 years under the government. So the two of us came out, we founded this economic group, and now we divide our time between working on economic policies and working on economic development here for local governments in the counties and cities. So recently, a couple bills came out that we had a hand in. One of them was Senate Bill 102, which was a big property tax related bill, property in general related bill. It's called the Live Local Act of Florida. And it did a few different items. Number one, it sort of did what was called preempting local governments, where you take power from the local governments because you don't like what they're doing. And one of the big triggers for that was rent control. There were a few different cities. Orange County, Orlando was tried to institute rent control. I know Miami-Dade and Miami itself were thinking about instituting it. And we did a study that helped promote this bill, where we found that rent control was going to cost the economy statewide about $4 billion, and almost half of that was going to be located in just Miami. And the big reason why all those costs were going to happen is that the second you institute rent control, you reduce any sort of return on investment, because their money is based on increasing rents, and if you're not going to get the increasing rents and the cost of materials are high in COVID, it doesn't make any sense to build. And that lack of construction activity led to about $4 billion in losses to the state, which has implications for taxes, has implications for just future growth in general.
Right.
So we were pretty happy with that study, and the bill got signed into law about a month ago.
So that's interesting, Jared. I want to dig in a little bit deeper on that rent control issue, because we've heard over the years, the rents are rising. There's a lot of people struggling. You've got the, I'd like to see a bill about, hey, let's limit BlackRock, Vanguard, some of these other big companies, Zillow even, for buying single-family homes. Let's limit that, because then they jack up the rates. Can you speak to that a little bit?
That's a big driver. Number one, the biggest driver is we quit building. And then what happens is you create these high rents, and then you make a signal for groups like BlackRock to come in and buy them up, and then of course they're going to extract every single penny they can possibly extract out of these properties.
Right.
And then the local governments, they have their electorate, their constituency that starts clamoring for some sort of relief, and the local government says, well, rent control makes sense. And what we said is that rent control doesn't make sense in this case.
Interesting, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. We're talking with Jared Parker here, Regional Economic Consulting Group, right here in Tampa Bay, one of our expert contributors. He's a partner there. And so the rent controls, House Bill 183, major depressive disorders.
Yeah, so that was another big bill we did. This one had a little less success, but we did get it through the Senate, which we were pretty happy about that. Basically, what happens is insurance companies deny drugs. Everybody's had experience with that. They do what's called step therapy, where you take steps to get the drug that was originally prescribed by your doctor.
Right.
And it's also called fill first. So I take this drug, it doesn't work. The insurance company will says, well, let's try this other drug. That doesn't work. Let's try a third drug. That doesn't work. Then you can actually go to the drug that was originally prescribed by your doctor. And what we did, we introduced a bill, 183, that went in there and circumvented that process for Medicaid, and said whatever the doctor prescribes up front is what you get to take. Now, we found, to promote this bill, we found that statewide, with everybody in Florida that has mental health disorders, that was a cost to the economy about $271 million each and every year. And a big reason for that is what's called productivity loss, where number one, people just don't show up to work because their drugs aren't working, or they're depressed, or whatever. The other thing is they will show up to work, but then they surf YouTube all day. So we were able to quantify those elements, and we were able to sit there and say that cost outweighed any kind of savings that the insurance company would make.
Wow.
And that overall, to the economy and to the state, it's a negative, and that this should be removed.
Wow.
So,
man, those are intense studies.
Yeah.
How does that? Can you give any insights on how do you come up with that data?
That kind of thing. Well, that study was actually based on a study that's been done for the last 30 years. And they do surveys. And they go and they reach out to about 64,000 individuals nationwide. And they just track them and they follow them. They sit there and they say, okay, part of this 64,000, they're inside insurance policies that use step therapy. And this other part of the 64,000 is inside insurance companies that don't use. And then once you get those two groups of population for mental health, you can then compare, how much more are you missing work? How much more are you just not productive at work?
Right.
How many more doctor visits do you have? How many more emergency visits do you have? And then what's your actual medical bill? How much more does this cost you? And then you start weighing all those factors together, and you start to develop a picture that says in total for Florida, when you melt the numbers down to Florida, it's an overall negative of about $271 million.
Wow.
And we found actually for the Medicaid piece alone was about $50 million.
Wow,
So,
50 million. Yeah, that's a good sample size. Then you said roughly 64,000.
64,000.
So that's a big sample size. Talk to me about suicides. I say like this. That's a big issue when you looked at the lockdowns, the mask mandates, even the development for children. It hit close to home with a kid out of school where my daughter went to school. Suicide was there. What are you seeing in that? Because I see that as one of your bullet points here.
Yeah. The suicides is another element of that cost tied to that 271 million. It's lost life earnings, and what we found before, which is actually, this is really interesting statistic. So we found people under 18 are about twice as likely to have a mental health disorder than somebody over 18.
Right.
And that number just skyrocketed the last 2 years, 3 years. And a lot of that we feel like was tied to COVID, and it was tied to the lockdowns, and it was tied to the fact that people were just isolated.
Absolutely.
And had no human contact.
Absolutely.
Suicides are also sort of they're slightly difficult to track, because once a person commits suicide, you don't know why. They're not here to tell us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we tried to capture that impact, and it was about 15, 20 million of that number, because suicides aren't common, but they still happen, and they still represent the cost.
But and like you said, the increase in those numbers have statistically skyrocketed lately with the CCP virus, the Chinese virus coming over, the unprecedented just lockdowns by the government, these masks covering up your face. I mean, it's taking away that human connection, and especially when a kid's developing, plus all the confusion now with these genders and these pronouns, and can women or can men have babies? Like all this garbage being fed to some of the kids, and luckily not all the schools. But yeah, it's very confusing. Can you imagine being a teenager these days? Going through puberty, and having all of these different types of concerns, and then not to mention social media and all the pressures of keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty statistically significant to see those two sections of the population. One has twice the incidence of mental health disorders.
Right.
Being below 18, and I mean, again, it's about 14%.
Yeah.
14 to 15%, and below it's about 6% to 7%. So it's a stark contrast.
Yeah, and a lot of it's our problem, or what do they call it? Where you cause the issue yourself. It's like a self-caused issue. You wouldn't find it in like the suicide rates in like rural Africa.
Yeah.
Like these people live in their tribes and they're happy and they're hunting and gathering and all that, right? So they don't have these issues that we have because we're putting it on ourselves. Some of our weak-minded, people in the alphabet mafias and these things. It's interesting when you think about that. So that was interesting. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about what is a recession. What's the definition of a recession, and are we in one? Are we heading toward one? And we got Jared Parker in studio, Regional Economic Consulting Group. He's a partner there, and he can definitely help us weigh in on that. I've got a clip I'm going to play about the value of the dollar and where are we headed in terms of recession here coming up on the Consumer Quarterback Show. Also, Logan Briggs later on the program, TH Roofing, one of our expert contributors in studio as well. Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.
Online at consumerqb.com.
We appreciate you spending some time with us here on the Consumer Quarterback Show. It really means the world to us when you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, and follow us online at Brandon Rhymes1, at CQB Show on Instagram and Facebook, and of course the YouTube channel. Over 2,000 videos now, 10 years on air here helping you win. So pretty much any category you pull up, if you type in a category, Consumer Quarterback Show, Brandon Rhymes, you'll see experts on there. Ray Hall Appraisals, of course, all of our self-defense experts as well. Thomas King, Florida Firearms Academy, Alex Lima, Black Belt Fitness. I mean, there's a lot of great information on there, different types of attorneys on our YouTube channel. Brandon Rhymes Realty is the channel to visit. And make sure you ring the bell and get notified with all of our new content dropping daily online as well. We got Jared Parker in the house, Regional Economic Consulting Group. We're going to talk about recession. What is the definition of recession? And also what's happening to the United States dollar as well. Before we do, we always like to feature our real estate listings live on air. It's part of our strategy to help our sellers sell faster for more money and profit more on the sale of their real estate properties, residential, commercial, and vacant land. We got a property at 3413 Lake Palermo Road. This is in Waimama. This is in southern Hillsborough County. Beautiful property here. This one's 3734 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. You got a Mediterranean style home located in a gated community, open concept gourmet kitchen, beautiful property here. It's that rural setting as well. People love that a little bit more land. You're spaced out in between homes out there in beautiful Waimama, Hillsborough County. 3413 Lake Palermo Road, Waimama. One of our beautiful listings from the Platinum MVP team at Keller Williams Realty, Libyan Coastal Elite. 6504 South Linda Street in Tampa. This is South Tampa home. You've got a large lot. You got an oversized lot, fenced in, 1,900 square feet home in South Tampa, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, over a quarter acre of land, updated kitchen and bath, motivated seller, 6504 South Linda Street in Tampa. You can see all of our listings at platinummvpteam.kw.com.
This is God's country.
All right, Jared Parker in the house, and he is a wealth of information. We just went over some of the new bills that passed legislation and are kind of enacted into law as well. We're going to get into this general economy and the slowdown. I want to play this clip here, and then we're going to have Jared comment.
What's the latest there? We've been hearing about a recession for a while.
Yeah, it's important to note that by the technical definition of the word, we already entered a recession last year when there were 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Though there was disagreement among economists and lawmakers over whether that was a real recession. There's little disagreement, though, that our economy is still heading toward recession in the near future. The majority of economists say it will come within the next 12 months, though many believe it will be more shallow and short-term than recessions in the past. And one more concerning sign I want to add on, it's worth tracking, that's the value of the dollar. Since September, it's fallen 8.6%, and Goldman Sachs announced this week that their analysts believe the dollar is still overvalued by as much as 15%. After a decade-long surge in the dollar's value, high inflation and efforts from foreign governments to, quote, decouple from the dollar and embrace other currencies have left its value sinking. That is good news for other countries, as it makes the cost of business lower for them when the dollar is less valuable, but that's bad news for our economy.
So you know what I find interesting, though, is as we're going through all of these negative impacts, I mean, just look at what the left has done. The border is open. Trump had a solidly, plan. If you don't have a nation, if you don't have sovereignty, you don't have a nation, right? So we got people flooding through, and of course they say the border's secure. And then they also redefine words. They're redefining words such as woman. What is a woman? Matt did that. Matt Walsh did that documentary. Recession. What is a recession? Oh, and then you probably heard about this one. Inflation. Oh, it's a transitory inflation, right? So they're coming up with all these new words, Jared. And when you think about a recession, the definition is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, right? That's what it should be.
Yeah.
So what's your assessment of that?
So, yeah, recessions are difficult to kind of pinpoint. Whatever anybody tells you, never trust them. They basically, recession is, like you said, NEBR is the group, it's National Bureau of Economic Researchers. They sit there and they are the ones that kind of put their seal on what a recession is or isn't.
Okay.
And textbook definition is 2 consecutive economic quarters. NEBR then goes back in and it looks at the data about 6 months down the road or over the course of the preceding 6 months or succeeding 6 months. And then they'll sit there and say, okay, we actually saw an economic contraction. And a big reason for that is that they try to calculate GDP. Mm-hmm. Like we just had GDP numbers come in last week, and I think it was 1.1% is what it came at. And a lot of analysts thought it was going to be 2% or higher, and they were shocked that it was that low. That's the advanced number, and they're going to go back again probably a month from now and 3 months from now to sit there and reevaluate. That GDP could be 2%, could be negative 1%. We just don't know. And so so that's why NEBR normally drags their feet on trying to say what a recession is or isn't. Now, you can have 2 negative consecutive quarters of output where GDP contracts, and there is a possibility that NEBR will say that wasn't a recession. It depends on the economic circumstances. And right now, the economy is just so funny coming out of COVID, and given the turmoil going in across the rest of the planet, we have, like right now, employment, there's 1.7 open jobs for every worker. Okay. So employment's really tight. Consumption, people are spending. However, businesses aren't investing. And the business investment fell, which is what drove that contraction in the GDP, or that made the slower growth in GDP at 1.1% instead of what they expected, which was closer to 2 to 2.5%.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the data is all over the place right now, and nobody knows what's going on. The dollar issue is concerning. I know big reason what led to the strength of the dollar is that you had a lot of international governments that locked their own economies down, and that means their capital markets are not great. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to invest in America, and they're going to buy dollars to invest in America. Now, as those economies start opening up, they don't need that money with the dollar anymore because they can spend it locally. So all that money is now going to start flooding out of the economy. And then when you add on the fact that inflation is happening, that's a drag. That's a drag on the economy. That does threaten what's going on currently.
Yeah. And then we got the topic of the BRICS. I want to come to the BRICS in a minute. I want to stick on our the recession talk. Okay, so when I think about GDP, it's interesting too. You think about gross domestic product, but in the United States, we've offshored a lot of our manufacturing and product, right? So it's really, in a sense, it's gross domestic services. There's so many services, right? I mean, restaurants and different types of personal services. So that's one, and then secondly, when the Federal Reserve, it seems like they've accomplished their mission of crushing the economy. They wanted to slow inflation, but what they did is, I think they, to give them a critique, they were late to the interest rate game, raising the rates. They increased the rates too quickly, and then they should have let the rates, those rate hikes pause for a minute, right? Let's see how they trickle out. Let's see how it affects employers. Let's see how it affects everything. So I think that's what I see, and I see that there's going to be more job losses coming, and potentially is what I'm looking at.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am not a fan of Fed policy and the way they've treated this, what we're going through now, whatever it may be.
Yep.
I think the biggest issue is that a lot of people had a lot of money in their pockets because of COVID, and we can sit there and say, during COVID, unemployment went up 20% temporarily.
Yep.
That still means 80% of the people are working, and they didn't have places to spend that money. So their savings ballooned. Then they had COVID relief from the federal government. So they had a ton of cash to spend, and the Federal Reserve's idea is to sit there and slow the money that businesses can use to invest and expand their own supply to service the demand.
Right.
And the demand was off the charts. And hurting the business doesn't slow the demand. They still have the money.
I want to hold you over to the next segment. Just a couple more questions about that. Jared Parker, Regional Economics Consulting Group on the Consumer Quarterback Show, going to talk more about the economy. And then we got Logan Briggs in the house, TH Roofing, throofing.com. And visit us online. We'd love to connect at Brandon Rhymes 1 on Instagram, Twitter, and follow our YouTube, Brandon Rhymes Realty. We'll be right back. Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.
Call Brandon today at 813-917-1894.
All right, Brandon Rhymes here, Consumer Quarterback Show. We got Jared Parker in the house, Regional Economic Consulting Group. We're talking about the economy and kind of predicting on where we might see things heading. Got some good content coming up for you as well. Logan Briggs, TH Roofing, on the program today. And before we do, we will always want to feature our real estate listings. We like to pitch our listings live on air as a strategy to help sellers sell faster for more money, utilizing our radio TV show model. We got a property at 3058 Mildred Drive. This is a beautiful Lake Tarpon home. It's on the canal at Lake Tarpon. You've got 1,380 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. It's a spacious corner lot as well. It's fenced in, so you can park your toys in the backyard. Open concept kitchen with granite countertops, wood accent wall, screened-in patio with a private pool in your backyard. And you have a boat dock on the canal leading out to Lake Tarpon, which is the largest lake in all of Tampa Bay. 2,500-acre lake as your backyard and your play area there. 3058 Mildred Drive, Palm Harbor, Pinellas County. Beautiful property from the Platinum MVP team at Keller Williams Realty. 14 Baywood Drive, Palm Harbor. This is another gorgeous listing. I love this property because you have a beautiful home, and then at the end of the street, just a couple of lots down, you have your own private boat ramp. You got a community boat ramp with bay access into the Gulf of Mexico. 14 Baywood Drive, Palm Harbor, 2,913 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 bath. You got a completely remodeled 3-story home. Wood-burning fireplace in the living room, vaulted ceilings, gorgeous kitchen as well, and it's got a pool and a screened-in backyard. Beautiful property, waterfront community, 14 Baywood Drive, Palm Harbor, Florida. You can see all of our listings at PlatinumMVPTeam.kw.com. And a quick shout out to Innovative Solar, longtime friends of the Consumer Quarterback Show, InnovativeSolarFL.com. You can find them online if you're thinking about adding solar onto your residential, commercial properties. InnovativeSolarFL.com. Make sure you let them know the Real Estate Quarterback sent you. Take them up on special offers and incentives. All right, Jared Parker, Regional Economic Consulting Group, kind of summarizing a little bit of what we've seen lately. So, we talk about the Fed and the bad job they've done, the ridiculous remarks that Yellen said. The secretary said something to the effect of, if you want to help the economy get more abortions, she actually said that. Wage growth has been declining over the past 15 months. Both CPI and PPI are both trending down. The most recent CPI print for March was only 0.1% month over month or annualized at 1.2%. Shelter inflation is slowing down, although there's a 12-month lag in it showing the CPI because of the way it's determined. So anyways, we look at that. You look at jobless claims rising, the Fed raising rates again. What's your overall take, and then what are our vulnerabilities?
Well, I think the best term I've heard regarding the current conditions in the economy was done by the Moody's analysts, the guys that do the credit ratings for states and large companies and the federal government. They said slow session.
Okay.
And that sits there, and that can say, it's going to be very, very extremely slow growth, or it's going to be shallow negative.
Okay.
And it's going to be somewhere in that realm. And really, when you look at the data, as I was saying previously, employment's tight. We have 3 million less baby boomers in the workforce today than we had pre.
Okay.
So that's always going to drive. That's going to be a pressure just to find work. Now that means you're going to get a little bit of wage pressure. You're going to get shortages. You're going to get supply chain issues. Those are all negatives to the economy at large.
Right.
But on the flip side, you have consumption. And that, again, was tied to COVID. I think it was J.P. Morgan said something like 1.4 to 1.8 trillion dollars in the economy, and that people just haven't spent yet, and that people are more than happy to spend. So that keeps demand up, and then you have the drag on supply, which is overall a negative to the economy because it just makes things more expensive for less output. And then again, investments down, and that's tied a lot to the Fed policy, where the Feds go in and they sit there and say, we can't do anything about the demand, but what we can do is make it more expensive to borrow money for the supply side. And in that case, if the supply side can't get their money, they can't expand their operations, they can't afford the workforce, they can't bring in new goods to stock on the shelves. That all leads to inflationary pressure because the demand is still there, right? So I think in total, I have had a negative. I mean, I'm not crazy. I'm not a big fan of what the Fed's doing. I don't think raising the rates we're up to 5.25% on the federal funds rate right now is a good idea, and I think that's a huge vulnerability to the economy.
Yeah, I do too.
And if we don't start smoothing that out in the future, we run a major risk of contraction.
Yeah, and we're at $31 trillion in debt now. The United States debt increased to $31 trillion, out of control spending by Joe Biden and the extreme Democrats. The economy, that's more than the entire U.S. economy, $31 trillion. Level of spending is unsustainable and has caused inflation to soar. So families are feeling it. I did want to get to the BRICS. Can you define what the BRICS is, and maybe what your thought is? Again, these alternative currencies popping up potential. Because if we lose that world's currency reserve, we're in big trouble.
Yeah. The BRICS are Brazil, Russia, India, China,
Saudi
Arabia. Sit there and do the acronym in my head.
Yeah, me too.
But they are your largest economies outside of the United States. The U.S. makes up about 25 trillion of world output, which is about 25%. Those guys represent about 40 trillion. I think is when the numbers come out, or roughly the way the numbers work out. If they can start peeling away the amount of transactions that are done at the international level away from the dollar in favor of some sort of BRIC currency, then you're gonna look at a lot less demand for the dollar, and if there's a lot less demand for the dollar, the value of the dollar goes down.
Right.
And so that's always going to be a vulnerability to how we conduct ourselves from a policy standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jared, always a pleasure, man. How do you want people to connect with you?
Just our website, regionaleconomicconsulting.com. Again, I'm Jared Parker, and I'm a founding partner there. And we work with local governments. We also work with developers, and we try to sell a developer's case to the local government in terms of things like incentives, any kind of encouragement that local governments may have to work with developers.
Right. So you go in and do the studies and say, hey, here's what you can look at as far as tax revenues, different types of development.
Yes. Yeah, we do the impact studies, and we present it to them. show, the benefits of this particular proposal versus that.
Excellent. Good stuff. Jared Parker, folks, regionaleconomicconsulting.com. Regionaleconomicconsulting.com. Thanks for coming in, Jared.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, taking a quick break. Coming back, Logan Briggs on the Consumer Quarterback Show. We're going to talk about roofing, TH Roofing, and supply chain, and also storm relief efforts, what he's seeing down in South Florida here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.